In 2006, I handed my best friend the blueprints that would change medicine forever. In 2023, I handed his lawyers the evidence that would destroy him. 17 years is a long time to plan the perfect revenge. I handed Julian Crane the future on a set of blueprints, and he handed me back a knife in my spine 17 years later. We weren't just partners, we were brothers who'd built a dream from a college dorm room. And I was the fool who didn't see that brothers could become murderers. It began in 2006, in the sterile glow of our shared lab at Stanford. The Thor Crane Neural Bridge was my life's work, a device that could interpret basic neural signals from paralyzed patients, allowing them to control computers. Julian handled the business, the investors, the charming presentations. I handled the science, the long nights, the code that felt like translating the soul's whispers into machine language. The night we got the prototype to work, we celebrated with cheap champagne. Julian clinked my glass, his eyes reflecting the screen's light. "We're going to help millions," Aris said. "And we're going to be kings." I believed him. I believed in us. 3 months later, the paperwork for the patent application was ready. Julian took it to file. "I'll handle the boring legalese," he'd smiled. "You keep doing the magic." The magic, it turned out, was mine alone. The patent file that day listed one inventor, Julian Michael Crane. My name was nowhere. When I confronted him, his face morphed from friend to stranger in a heartbeat. "Aris, be realistic," he'd said, voice cold and smooth as surgical steel. "Your name complicates things. The investors are nervous about your creative volatility. This way we keep control. I'll make sure you're taken care of." He offered me a generous salary as lead engineer. My own invention, my child, had been legally kidnapped, and he was offering me visitation rights. The betrayal was a physical annihilation. I spent a year in a haze of rage and despair, watching from the sidelines as Julian secured $50 million in venture capital, as Crane Neurotech became the darling of Silicon Valley. I was a ghost in my own life. I quit, of course. The severance package was hefty, with a brutal non-disclosure agreement. Signing it felt like signing my own death certificate. That night, I made 2 recordings. One was a video, my face raw with grief, detailing every moment of the theft. The other was an audio file, just 3 words whispered into my phone. "I will remember." I buried the digital files in an encrypted drive, along with the original, dated lab notebooks that contained Julian's own handwriting on early schematics, his personal copy I'd forgotten to take back. Then I disappeared. Act 2 was my metamorphosis. The money from the severance bought me time, not comfort. I moved to a small town in Oregon, changed my name to Adrian Teller, and enrolled in online law courses. Not to become a lawyer, but to learn how to think like one, to understand the weapon that had been used against me. By day, I was a quiet IT consultant for local businesses. By night, I was a digital archaeologist, meticulously following Crane Neurotech's every move. I watched their clinical trials, read their SEC filings, tracked their supply chain. I learned Julian's patterns, his obsession with legacy, his secret gambling habit he thought was hidden behind offshore accounts, his brittle marriage to a socialite who loved his money, not him. I saw the flaw in his perfect empire, his desperation to be seen as the sole visionary. He couldn't share credit, so he surrounded himself with sycophants, not innovators. The neural bridge was hitting its limits, and they had no one to evolve it. For 10 years, I built my parallel life. I cultivated a new expertise, medical device regulatory law and forensic accounting. I created a ghost company in Luxembourg, a shell with no trace back to Adrian Teller or Aris Thorne. Through it, I began making small, strategic investments in the niche suppliers and component manufacturers that Crane Neurotech depended on. I became a silent, minor stakeholder in his own ecosystem. All the while, I waited for the moment his arrogance would create an opening. It came in 2021. Crane Neurotech, under pressure from shareholders, announced the next-gen Neuralink, a revolutionary leap. I analyzed their press release and the scant technical data. It was a fraud. They'd slapped a new name on minor hardware tweaks. The core software, my software, was unchanged and straining at its limits. Julian had backed himself into a corner, promising a miracle he couldn't deliver. This was my window. Using my Adrian Teller identity, I applied for a senior regulatory compliance position at Crane Neurotech. My resume was a masterpiece of half-truths, built on my real, hard-won knowledge. I aced the interviews. When I walked into Julian's office for the final round, 17 years older, my hair gray, my demeanor calm and professional, he didn't recognize me. Not a flicker. I was just another middle-aged expert he could use. He hired me. For 2 years, I worked inside the belly of the beast. I had access to everything: the rushed, flawed data for the next-gen device, the worried internal memos, the frantic engineering meetings. I documented it all. I also found the smoking gun, a series of deleted server logs showing deliberate erasure of failed safety tests from the early trials of the original device trials that had happened after I left, trials Julian had certified as clean. I copied everything. I also, gently, befriended a brilliant, disillusioned young engineer on the team, Maya. She reminded me of myself, full of ideas the company stifled. I became her mentor, and in her frustration, I found an ally who didn't know she was one. The reckoning was set for Neurotech Summit 2023, the industry's biggest stage, where Julian would unveil the fraudulent next-gen device to a global audience. My plan was simple: use his moment of greatest triumph to stage his professional execution. I arranged for Mia, who had grown disgusted with the deception, to give a separate technical presentation right before Julian's keynote. With my backstage access, I subtly altered the slide deck on her laptop. The night before, I anonymously leaked the evidence of the falsified safety data to 2 relentless financial journalists, timed to hit their inboxes as the summit began. The day arrived. The auditorium hummed with anticipation. Julian stood in the wings, polished and grinning, the king of his domain. I stood in the tech booth, wearing a headset, just another anonymous crew member. Maya took the stage for her technical overview. Her first slides were normal. Then she clicked to the next one. It wasn't her slide. It was the original 2006 blueprint, clear as day, with both our signatures, Aris Thorne and Julian Crane, visible in the corner. The room murmured. Mia, confused but quick on her feet, said, "Let's look at the foundational IP." She clicked again. A side-by-side comparison appeared, the 2006 original code snippet and the current next-gen core code. They were 99% identical. The murmuring grew louder. From the tech booth, I overrode the presentation feed. Julian's face, suddenly pale on the backstage monitor, was replaced on the main screen with a single document, the USPTO filing receipt for the original patent, showing only his name. Then, a cascade of documents. The deleted server logs, the internal memos admitting the next gen was a stall tactic, the financial projections based on the lie. The room erupted into chaos. At that moment, the journalists' stories went live. Heads in the audience looked down at their phones, then back at the screen, then at Julian, who was now being approached by his own horrified PR head. I took off my headset, the silence in my own ears profound. I walked out of the booth, through the panicking crowd, and straight to Julian. He saw me then, truly saw me. The recognition dawned in his eyes, not with anger first, but with a terrifying, hollow understanding. "Aris," he breathed. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply handed him a single sheet of paper. It was a lawsuit, filed an hour earlier, for patent fraud, theft of intellectual property, and racketeering, seeking $43 million in damages and full reversion of the IP. "You were right, Julian," I said, my voice barely audible over the din. "We were going to help millions. And you were going to be king." I turned and walked away. The fallout was nuclear. The stock collapsed. The DOJ opened an investigation. Within a year, the company was bankrupt, its assets sold. My lawsuit was settled quietly. I got the patents back. But here is the second twist, the one I never planned for. With the patents returned to me, I founded a nonprofit to open source the core technology, making it affordable globally. At the launch press conference, a woman approached me. She was in a wheelchair. She took my hand, her own hand trembling slightly from her condition. "The neural bridge let me write my first letter to my daughter in 10 years, she said, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." In that moment, Julian's final, sneering words to me in a deposition echoed in my head. "You think you won, Aris? You got the blueprints back, but I got the legacy. My name is on the medical history books. I saved the lives. What did you do but destroy?" He was wrong, but he was also right. He had stolen my work, but in putting it out into the world, he had helped those millions. My revenge was complete, perfect, and utterly devastating. Yet, the purest good that had come from my life's work was inextricably tangled with his sin. I got justice. I got restitution. But I could never get back the pure joy of that night in the lab with my friend, the untainted hope that we would change the world together. The victory feels like a phantom limb. I know it's there, I can sense its shape, but I cannot feel its warmth. Revenge doesn't give you back what was stolen. It just proves you were strong enough to take something from the thief in return. And sometimes that has to be enough.